Red alert. Someone sound the alarm. Baseball's in trouble once again. Oh my goodness. Yes, sound all the alarms. The Miami Marlins have already probably ruined the MLB season. This is the Rich Report, bringing you the richest content across entertainment. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for watching if you're following us on YouTube, and thanks if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Welcome to episode 13. Johnny Crane and David Church joining as always. Gentlemen, how are you doing on another start to the week?
It was a great start to the week, and then you find out that not even 4 days have passed since the MLB is back, and we're already in talks of possibly suspending the season because of the inability to take care of players and the players to actually be smart about this situation. And of course, it comes from the Marlins, one of the bottom feeder teams, because now we actually have to somewhat care about them. It's disgusting, and I'm so annoyed. It's another week. Let's just get through this so we can actually have a baseball season, please.
You know, maybe, just maybe, and I'm not taking sides here, but maybe if the players and the owners weren't bickering back and forth for 3.5 weeks, maybe we could have worked out a safety protocol in case a situation like this happens. Let's get into this. Let's go.
Yes, even if you or unless you're hiding under a rock, you heard the news that a bunch of Marlins, I think it was like a third of the team, I don't know exact numbers, but yes, a lot of them tested positive for COVID in a series against the Phillies. The Phillies right now are currently being tested, and those results will come out later. But yes, an ultimate disaster for Major League Baseball, while the NBA and NHL are getting 0 positive tests pretty much because of the bubble. And that was my main concern from the beginning with MLB was there's no bubble. There's no hub cities that they can play baseball. They all thought they could do one giant bubble in Arizona and, 115-degree weather with one stadium that's indoors. That totally wasn't going to work out. But hub cities probably wouldn't have been the best case. But nope, they all decided to play in their home stadiums. And here we are, not even 1 week into the season, and we have an outbreak with one team. So, gentlemen, let's say the season continues to go along and it goes as planned. Do you see more and more players backing out?
I definitely think it's a possibility. I mean, especially if you're in the NL East or the AL East, because you're going to be facing direct competition with that team, with the Marlins, and now even with the Phillies, because we don't know if they've been affected as much as they have been by playing them. So it's definitely a huge possibility that we see some guys opt out because the risk is just not worth it. For me, if I was in that situation and, I was, unless I was, like a guy like a Bryce Harper or a Mike Trout, like a guy that has to be on the team in order for the team to be successful, it would be a tough decision. But if I'm, a reserve who maybe doesn't get as much playing time but still has a solidified contract, or at least just a regular everyday player, I would absolutely opt out because it's not worth it. You're going to have a year to relax and actually, work on yourself, not only as a player, but as a person, and then get ready for the time when the time comes that there is no more situation of a quarantine season or a COVID season. It is the situation in itself where you have to realize what's best for you. It's not but what's best for your organization. It's not what's best for your team. It's what's best for you at this point. And for me, I would make the decision, no, I'm opting out. Like, I don't want this to happen. I got a family that I care about. I don't want them to get prone to me. I don't want myself to become prone to this. So I need to take myself out of the situation. And it's tough because the problem is that this might bring down the whole season. One team could possibly ruin it for the entire MLB it's a fault on the it's a fault on the Marlins. It's a fault on the commissioner, and it's a fault everywhere because you need to take this seriously. Just because we're playing baseball again does not mean that there's no lower of a risk to what you're doing. It's a huge risk that you have to realize because you could get sick at any time. This is nothing like we've ever seen before. You have to focus on what's more important. What's more important is you taking care of yourself and staying healthy rather than batting 300 and hitting 30 home runs at the end of the season.
There are three reasons you could opt out. Like you mentioned, David. One, if you're a reserve player and you're not going to get a lot of playing time anyway, and you might have a little bit of a health risk anyway with any underlying conditions you may have, there's reason number one. Reason number two, you mentioned family. Mike Trout, he has a kid coming up. His wife is having a kid very soon. He's going to leave the season to go take care of his wife for that. Maybe he uses that opportunity to opt out entirely. That's option number two. And then option number three, David Price recently came out and said, the reason I opted out is that Rob Manfred doesn't really trust and hasn't put emphasis on player safety. And whether or not I'm opting out because I'm not going to get playing time, or I'm opting out because I want to take care of my family, or I'm opting out because basically I don't trust the commissioner. I don't trust baseball to get done what they should have gotten done months ago when they were talking about the negotiation process to have a season anyway. So any of those three processes are very valid reasons to opt out of the season. And honestly, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is stuff that should have been worked out when the negotiations were going on. But instead, we had 3 weeks or close to 3 weeks of arguing back and forth. And again, I get it. The owners have their viewpoint. The players have their viewpoint too. But in a global pandemic, sacrifices had to be made. And those sacrifices should have been made to take care and come up with health safety protocols to have a season go as cleanly as possible. Now I get it. Baseball season was trying to start the season. The NHL and the NBA were just resuming a season. They were about done with the regular season anyway. So it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison. But even still, there should have been some effort put into some sort of bubble protocol, health safety protocol, or just any protocol entirely to better deal with a situation like this and to better not magnify the situation as bad as it is. Because now we don't know how big this issue is. Yes, we know double-digit players and personnel for the Marlins have tested positive. We know some Phillies have been tested. Maybe they'll come back positive. Maybe the umpire crew might test positive. So this goes well beyond just the teams and the personnel. This goes to the entire sport. We don't know the snowball effect. And the fact that MLB didn't really put much effort into having a protocol to deal with this is very telling.
Yeah, and there is no mandatory testing. There are no, precautions going into the season. So, okay, we're playing at home stadiums with no fans. That's about it. Oh, wait, you can't spit seeds onto the dugout or onto the field. That's bad. But we're not going to do anything to prevent the actual problem, which is spreading the virus in the first place. So yeah, just it's bad on the MLB's part. Thank God the NBA and NHL are doing the proper testing, and what's come out of it, 0 positive cases. Now we're gonna get into this later about players leaving the bubble and then trying to come back, but we'll save that for later. Our teams, we're gonna get into that. We're gonna start with Johnny. The Orioles have a better record than the Los Angeles Dodgers at the moment. The Orioles took 2 of 3 from the Boston Red Sox. So, Johnny, how are you feeling after your first completed series of the season?
Hey, a series win is a series win, okay? And in a rebuilding year, I'll take series win, sure. It's the small victories that count. And when I look at this series, what really stood out to me, yes, the offense scored a good amount of runs. Yes, they're without John Means and Trey Mancini, are arguably their 2 best players. But their starting pitching, and their pitching entirely, didn't really walk a lot of guys. Their control was actually relatively decent, all considered. And when you look at a pitching staff that last year walked a lot of guys, they were pretty much subpar in practically every pitching category under the sun. The fact that they were able to come out and mitigate and hold the Red Sox to only base hits and not walks against a pretty solid Red Sox lineup that just by itself, that's really telling. And that just means that, maybe not the Orioles aren't going to compete this year. Maybe they're not going to go for a playoff spot. But small victories like that net a series win, I can't complain at all. I mean, good for them.
I really, wanted to come onto this show and talk about how my team is doing really well and how they're, progressing. But they're not. They're being straight up garbage right now. I'm going to put it plain and simple. Because now let's go through the biggest issues that I've seen in the first 3 games. And we still got one right now. I'm watching it right now. And we did have a decent first inning. We got 2 hits. Ooh, great. But here's the problem. Our freaking batters keep swinging at the first pitch. we are always down 0-2, 0-1, or just swing at the first pitch regardless of what it is and getting grounders to second base or shortstop. We need to see more pitches. Please go into deep counts. Get on base. That's how you win. That's how you score runs. In order to win, you got to score runs. And in order to score runs, you got to get on base. And in order to get on base, you got to work through the counts. That's all I'm asking for. And then we have the relievers. Not even just the relievers, the starters too. We're giving up walks like they're freaking hotcakes. We're giving up walks every single time. 3 full counts almost like 40 to 50% of the time that we're pitching out there. Madison Bumgarner had a decent debut in the Diamondbacks uniform. He did give up that one hit to Eric Hosmer, who just destroyed the ball. I think it was either Eric Hosmer or Will Myers. But it just either way, he only had that bad outing. And then Robbie Ray threw almost 90 pitches in only 4 innings. Then Zach Gallen, who actually looked very promising. He did throw about 80 pitches in 4 innings, but he only gave up 1 run on 2 hits. That we will take. That looks like he's promising. He just needs to find the strike zone a little bit more. And then the bullpen. The bullpen is just destroying everything that we have going for us. We okay, we're down 3-1. We're still in this game. We got this. And then big boy, either Junior Guerra or Hector Rondon, who cares? They're both garbage right now at this point. They come in and they just give up a home run, and now we're down 7-1. It's a mess. And I'm hoping that today we can at least get a series split and then regroup, go to Texas, get some wins in Arlington, and then move on from this point because we need to get it going.
Hey, bases loaded in the first inning there, and Christian Walker grounded into that classic double play there.
Yeah, you know what? Move on, please.
And I thought I was the angry baseball fan here. Oh, the Los Angeles Dodgers.
My God, we're burning alive!
Not good. Not a good outing in the first series. Granted, they did
boo-hoo. Best team in National League.
Granted, they did take the first 2 against the Giants, but those last 2 games were inexcusable. 1 run against the San Francisco Giants. Are you kidding me? With the lineup the Dodgers have, 1 run is not going to cut it. It's only 60 games here. There's no, oh, well, we can take this game off. No, you got to go now or you're going to find yourself behind the Padres, Diamondbacks, and Giants all at once. The Rockies have a better record than the Dodgers. Yeah, this is not how you want to start a season. This is not how you want to introduce your $320 million player in Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts not off to a hot start hitting-wise. Cody Bellinger not off to a hot start hitting-wise. The only guys that are showing up right now, Justin Turner, Chris Taylor, and Corey Seager. Everybody else is taking a big old crap right now. So, yeah, it's going to be time to turn around soon. Alex Wood, terrible. Julio Urias, mediocre.
I feel so bad for you. I really do. I really feel bad for you.
Walker Buehler needs to come back. Walker Buehler needs to show up and everything will be fine because Walker Buehler is the Cy Young winner. So
I really feel bad for your $500 million plus payroll and your plethora of talent.
Well,
I feel really bad for it.
Oh, well, when the talent is only 2 of 14 with runners in scoring position, that's not okay.
In the past 2 games,
not acceptable.
Yes.
Exactly. Not acceptable. They got to do something about it. They got to fix it now. It's time. You got it. Look, I would not be shocked if they just went and got swept by Houston. If they do, they're not making the playoffs. If they get swept by Houston, the Dodgers will not be going to the postseason. I'm calling it right now. I don't care. Speaking of the Astros, Justin Verlander has a forearm injury. Initial reports said he was done for the season, but then Justin Verlander goes out and tweets, oh, well, actually, that's false. I might miss only a month or so. Regardless, that's a lengthy amount of time. That's pretty much half the season if you're going to miss a month. So, gentlemen, does this affect Houston's playoff hopes?
Absolutely. I mean, that's your ace up there. Zach Greinke can hold his own a little bit. They still have Lance McCullers, and they got, guys that can try and, fill that spot, but no one can replace Justin Verlander. Justin Verlander is that kind of guy. And it does hamper that team a little bit because he is, the guy that holds it down in the bullpen and in the rotation. He's the guy that is the leader. He's the obvious leader of that team, and he needs to be there. And if he's not, it's going to be tough. So, their offense is still going to be potent, and they're still going to score runs. But if their pitching is not there, then they're going to have to do something. So Verlander being out definitely impacts them. I think it might impact them just based on where they're seated in the postseason, because I still think they are a favorite to get there, but it could – we'll just have to see what happens after this, because we don't even know how long he'll be gone. It was originally said he will be gone for the season. Now he's saying it won't be the case, but, I mean, we don't know how long he'll be out, so we'll have to wait and see on this one.
We're seeing the issue that Houston has that a lot of other teams have as well. The Nationals have potentially this issue. The Cubs potentially have this issue. When you rely on a starting rotation that's getting up there in age, Justin Verlander is over 35 years old. Zach Greinke is over 35 years old. And when one of those guys goes down with injury, that creates a huge hole in that starting rotation in and of itself. That's not even anything about regarding how Houston is already trying to replace the production that Garrett Cole brought to them last year. He's gone too. So now on top of Garrett Cole's production gone, potentially Justin Verlander's production is gone as well. Those are two number one, number two guys that you have to really find a way to get that production in some shape or form now, whether it's from Zach Greinke, whether it's from Lance McCullers, who had a pretty solid outing this weekend. Yes, in the expanded playoff format, Houston will still be competitive. Their offense is a really good strength, even sign stealing scandal aside. Their offense will still score some runs. That'll definitely help them out in some games. But if Justin Verlander is out for any significant amount of time, and I'm sorry, when I hear the word elbow, shoulder, or forearm in a pitcher, I get worried. Verlander is saying, Dusty Baker is saying they'll check on him again in 2 weeks. I'm assuming he's going to be out at least half the season, at least. Assuming Verlander is out the whole year, going into the playoffs, because in the expanded playoff format, I will give Houston the benefit of the doubt that they will still make it. When you compare them to the likes of the Tampa Bay Rays, to the Cleveland Indians, to the New York Yankees, what do they have? They have more deep starting pitching now. And what propelled Houston to their World Series win several years ago? Sign-stealing scandal aside, really good starting pitching. Without that big ace now at the top, that creates a huge hole. And again, on top of Garrett Cole already gone, that creates a lot of different possibilities for the AL West entirely. Maybe Oakland capitalizes on this. Yes, Texas Rangers, they're without Corey Kluber. He left after the first inning, but maybe they do something. Maybe the Los Angeles Angels get some pitching going. Dylan Bundy had a pretty good outing over the weekend. So the AL West is a little bit more wide open now. This is a huge injury regardless, though, and even though Houston will still be competitive, if this is anything long-term, this is very, very, very significant for Houston.
We're going to bring on a special guest right now, and that will be Sean Clark. Sean, how are you doing this Monday afternoon?
The Fruit Loop.
Yes, I am now on this show as the king of the Fruit Loops. So it is good to be on here. I'm doing well. Premier League is over. It was a good end to the season. I'm glad it actually ended, unlike, another sport that may or may not end. So, but yeah, overall doing well.
Yeah, and I woke up for it. It was at 8 a.m. And, I wanted just one. I wanted just one of my brother's team in Man U or Johnny's team in Chelsea to not get top four, but unfortunately we got the other option, which is both got in. Look, I'm a little disappointed. I can't say I wasn't. It was a very anticlimactic final day for some. But yeah, here we are. Chelsea and Man U are on their way to the Champions League next year. So, Johnny, how are you feeling after a pretty stressful morning yesterday?
I woke up, I'm like, all right, I'm either going to be really, really giddy in about 2.5 hours, or I'm going to be very, very sad. Bring out the beer. I'm going to need one. What I saw from Chelsea was actually pretty good. Now, they won 2-0. Arguably, one of those goals, the free kick that Mason Mount took, probably shouldn't have happened anyway. There wasn't really contact there that the ref actually saw. So even if you take that goal out, it's still 1-0. And when I look at Chelsea's possession with the ball, they were a lot more lively at the midfield, and they were really pressing the defense with that offense. And even if they didn't score any goals, all they needed was a draw, and I thought that they possessed the ball enough to make that possible. However, what I really want to emphasize on is that Kepa didn't start. Their backup goalie started, and he was actually pretty solid. And I think this is actually very telling for Chelsea and Frank Lampard long term, Because if in a do-or-die game, practically, in a game that you have to win pretty much to get into the Champions League, and you don't go with your high-dollar young guy, that's very telling. That tells me that Frank Lampard wants to go in another direction in the goalkeeper position. And the backup was actually pretty good. And actually, what I really want to emphasize on is that over the past few matches, since N'Golo Kante's been out, the midfield play against Wolverhampton actually wasn't that bad. Again, they possessed the ball quite well. They put pretty solid pressure at the midfield. And if you can gain possession at the midfield, that really opens up a lot more options on offense for Chelsea. But even still, they got the job done. 1-0, 2-0. A win is a win. And long term, even though they're in the Champions League, long term, this creates a lot of recruiting aspirations to bring in more transfers. I know they're talking about Kai. Maybe they bring in another goalkeeper. Maybe they bring in a left back. Maybe they bring in a center back. Now that they're locked into the Champions League, these players have more incentive to come to Chelsea because, yes, Chelsea is officially in a new direction. A brand new head coach, a manager who didn't spend anything last year. He couldn't spend anything. A very youthful team, and he was still able to take them to the Champions League. I want to go to that team.
The biggest thing that stood out to me on Championship Sunday was the culmination of what was an epic collapse by Leicester City. Now, this is honestly a real tragic story. At the start of the season, Leicester City, they were actually competing for the top of the Premier League table with Liverpool. They were right there with them. And then when Liverpool started to pull away, Leicester was like the number 2 team. They were above Man City for most of the first half of the season. A sentence I didn't think I would say outside of 2016, but yes, it was a thing. And then heading into Project Restart, Leicester City started to fade a little bit because they beat Southampton 9-0 in October, but then lost to Southampton 2-1. So they're starting to fade a little bit. But overall on Project Restart, they were still in a good position. They were 8 points clear of Manchester United. They were in third place. Things were looking pretty good. And then Manchester City's ban got overturned, so that lost them a Champions League spot. So they had to finish in the top 4 to get to the Champions League. And what happened? Leicester City lost 4 games. They drew 3 times, and they only won twice. Of those 4 losses, the one that they're really going to be kicking themselves about is how on earth do you lose 4-1 to Bournemouth? Bournemouth finished the season in 18 points. Bournemouth is not even going to be in the Premier League next season. So how on earth do you lose 4-1 to that team and pick up a red card? That's just inexcusable. Leicester City lost 2-0 to Manchester United. They are going to be in the Europa League next season. And to me, it is as simple as this. Stop relying on Jamie Vardy to score every single one of your goals. That's not going to work. Sports is team, okay? Use more players on your team to score. Actually get players that can actually create chances. Maybe then you're not going to lose 4-1 to Bournemouth again because that's just unacceptable. Plain and simple.
Yeah, Sean, and I'll follow up with this. What do you think led to Leicester's downfall? Because they were off, like you said, to a really hot start. They were competing with the likes of Liverpool. Jamie Vardy was surging as the top goal scorer. And then it seemed to me, I don't know if this is true or not, but he kind of just tapered off. It sort of just became he sort of just faded into the background by the time we got to the restart. And then Leicester just sort of became a shell of what we saw back in the fall and then before COVID hit.
I think the biggest reason is Leicester became way too predictable. I think that combined with injuries to Ben Chilwell and Ricardo Pereira, the left and right back tandem, that hurt too. But I want to emphasize the Jamie Vardy part. Basically, they became so predictable. The fact that Jamie Vardy was the only one that was scoring was a problem. That means that the center backs could play back and just focus on Vardy. So Vardy wasn't getting open for as many chances. A game that emphasized this is the Arsenal draw. Leicester and Arsenal drew 1-1, but Arsenal would not have blown that lead if not for a bogus red card picked up by Eddie Nketiah, and that created one less center back to guard Jamie Vardy. He slipped in for the equalizer. Because of that, Vardy's able to get free. For the most part, when it's 11v11, Vardy was blanketed. He was covered almost all the time. Leicester emphasized defense and midfield, but when you only have one scoring option, your attack is very predictable, so you're not going to score as many goals. Leicester only scored 9 goals in the 9 Project Restart games. That is not ideal if you're trying to compete for a top spot. That's why Lester needs to bring another playmaker or at least change your philosophy because you can't rely on Vardy. That's just unacceptable.
So moving on to the NFL, Jamal Adams is now a Seattle Seahawk, and Sean wrote a column earlier this year about potential landing spots for Adams, and one of them, I think, was your final prediction, I believe, was a Seattle Seahawks. So you've been boasting about that for the last couple of days, but how do you feel about what Jamal Adams could bring to the Seahawks secondary?
I love it. Now, the Seahawks had to do something. They were torched by Devontae Adams in the playoffs last season. 9 catches, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And here's the thing. Aaron Rodgers only threw for 234 yards. What does that mean? Basically, Devontae Adams was a one-man wrecking crew in the Seahawks secondary. The Seahawks secondary, their best player was Trey Flowers. Not exactly ideal. So in the secondary, you needed that playmaker. You needed to bring back the boom, considering you lost the Legion of Boom. And you got the best thing possible. You literally got Cam Chancellor's reincarnation. Cam Chancellor retired a couple of years ago. At the same time, Jamal Adams came into the league. Is it a coincidence that Jamal Adams plays exactly like Cam Chancellor the year after Cam Chancellor retired? No, because he is the new Cam Chancellor. He is a hard-hitting safety. He can play all over the field. He can really set the tone for an entire defense. Remember, this is the same safety that came on a blitz, just took the ball away from Daniel Jones and ran the other way. You don't see any other players do that in the NFL. So he really brings a difference maker to the Seattle Seahawks team. He can be great in pass coverage. He can get pressure on the quarterback. He can even stop, let's say, Aaron Jones from running 50 yards. He can be everywhere. Seahawks didn't have that, so they had a very basic defense because that was all they could do because they were very limited. Having Jamal Adams really freshens up the defensive play calling. I'm excited to see what this defense can do, especially with Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, and I actually forgot about this. They brought back Bruce Irvin from that Seahawks Super Bowl championship defense. So I think they're now better than the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I think it's a great trade too, because especially when the Seahawks lost out on Earl Thomas, re-signing Earl Thomas, and he went to Baltimore, they've been looking for that kind of guy to be in that safety position to really, be a threat when opposing teams try to pass the ball. And when you look at what they gave up, I mean, that's 2 first-round picks. That's big for NFL. Picks are like, the golden ticket at this point for the NFL. If you get picks, you think it's a great trade, especially for a team like the Jets, who are still trying to figure out what they're going to do with the rebuild, because they've shown some promise, but not enough at this point. 2 first-round picks really helps them out. It's definitely a win for New York. They, lose out on a guy like Jamal Adams, but let's be real, the Jets probably didn't have any chance of, paying him or re-signing him or anything like that. And he wanted out just as much as the Jets, wanted to part ways with him. And then the Seahawks, they did get a 4th-round pick out of it. Like, that's nothing to really glare at, but I mean, it's an extra pick. But I mean, 2 first rounds, that's a lot. And is Jamal Adams worth it? Absolutely. He's probably the best safety in NFL right now. If you have the chance to go after him, you got to go find a way to get him. So 2 first-round picks is definitely the big spot for that trade. We'll see how it plays out for them. The Seahawks got to find a way to pay him and to make sure that he can stay on that roster, because if they give up 2 first-round picks for basically a glorified rental, then that might look a little bit bad on the team.
Look, I like the trade. I'm going to start off like that. I'm going to start off with that. I like Jamal Adams. He went to LSU, okay? I know what he can do. Great in coverage. The Jets needed to trade him, sure. They got pretty good value in return. Now, the Jets' problems are, of course, when your franchise player is a safety, there's a problem on the team. You had to trade him, and they got good value in return. However, let's look at this from the Seahawks' perspective. Yes, they needed to do something. If they want to compete for a Super Bowl, when they arguably have the second-best quarterback in the NFL at this point in Russell Wilson, they bring back all of the running back depth. They have some nice weapons. You want to compete now. You're here to win Super Bowls now. You're here to win rings. If you want to take over the reins of the NFC West and overtake the 49ers, you had to do something. This was the move to make. With that said, a move can be good and still be seen as an overpay. And this is an overpay. I'm sorry. When you give up 2 first-round picks, no matter where they're selected in the draft, another pick, another defensive back, And on top of that, you have to pay Jamal Adams $20+ million because that's probably what he's going to want if you don't want him to be a rental. When you combine all that together, that's a lot to give up for a safety. This isn't a quarterback. This isn't a wide receiver. This is a safety. It's really not something, a package you would really think you would give to a safety. Now, of course, Jamal Adams is in a class of his own in regard to the safety position in the NFL right now. I get it. You have to give up a lot to get value like that. However, it is a lot, and it is an overpay. But for Seattle, that's okay. That's fine. Again, they're here to compete now. Russell Wilson is in the prime of his career. You want to capitalize on that before he starts to age. And I think this move really does put Seattle definitely in the NFC contending position for the Super Bowl. I think they're much better, well-rounded than the Green Bay Packers. I think that their secondary now with Adams is a lot better than the Cowboys. I think the 49ers, I think when you compare Jimmy G to Russell Wilson, come on, it's Russell Wilson. And when you combine their secondary, I think that can definitely compete with the 49ers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they might be there, but they're a little unproven in the postseason, even with Tom Brady at the helm. He's getting up there in age. Maybe the age catches up to him this year. So I think with this move, this solidifies the Seahawks as a definite Super Bowl contender. And I think they can definitely make a run for that Super Bowl bid. I think this move really fits a need. It fills a hole on the team. And even though it costs a lot and will cost a lot in the future if they come up to pay Jamal Adams, it was a move they had to make, and now they're well positioned to make a deep run. So good for them.
Yeah, and even without that key enforcer in the secondary, the Seahawks were a couple inches away from sweeping the 49ers last year as well, and then bring on Adams just puts on a whole different element. It's getting a safety as hard-hitting and as, as unstoppable as Jamal Adams is, really changes the whole dynamic of an entire defense. I mean, look at the Raiders from their opening season game last year against Denver. The defense was fun. It looked like they had energy from Jonathan Abrams, all the hits he was putting on dudes, and then he had his shoulder injury and he was done for the year. And then the Raiders sort of had to take a step back. And when you don't have that guy that's going to consistently put hits on receivers, that makes you sort of have to play conservative to where it's sort of just the bend don't break, and the Raiders broke a lot more than they bended. So yeah, getting Adams, I mean, just because even as Johnny says, it probably wasn't overpay just of all the stuff, all the assets lost, but if you look at the Seahawks, you're not, as long as Russell Wilson's still in his prime, they're not going to be in a rebuilding state. They're never going to rebuild with Russell Wilson. So it's always just go for the big shot, regardless of what happens. And then if it doesn't work out, then, you always go back to the drawing board. But for now, this is good for them. Thank you, Sean, for hopping on with us, joining us on this Monday. Make sure to follow Sean on social media. We will leave his accounts in the link in the description. Also, a link to all of his columns for his site. So, Sean, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
All right, gentlemen. Lou Williams of the Los Angeles Clippers decided to go to, what was it, Magic City, I think it's called. Right? Am I correct?
I don't know.
A gentleman's club.
He went to a gentleman. Let me just look up the name of this. Yes, Magic City. He wanted some chicken wings. The place probably is good food. Yes, it is. It is a gentleman's club, but hey, if there's good food, there probably is good food in a lot of gentlemen's clubs. All he wanted was some food. He was out. He originally left the bubble because his dad had tragically passed away, but then he decided, take a little trip after to Magic City to get some chicken wings. But now it's developed into this big thing. He's out for 10 days. He's going to miss the season opener against the Lakers, which sucks. But at the same time, to really just make this guy an outcast and make him look like an awful person because he just ate some food, I think it's a little bit overreaction to what Lou Williams did. Yes, it's probably irresponsible knowing that, you could catch COVID anywhere. Probably going to a gentleman's club probably wasn't the smartest thing to do in a time like this, but I think it's being blown way out of proportion. I think he's people are just looking for reasons to get angry because that's what people do when they're bored. So what are your guys' thoughts on Lou Williams wanting to eat some chicken wings?
I more have a question for the strip club. How do they, handle social distancing if they're in a strip club? Like that seems like the worst lap dance someone's ever going to get in their life. So, I mean, it's just what? I mean, we were all thinking it. Come on. Like, come on. So, I mean, it's just funny. It's a funny story that, like Cam said, turned into this big deal. You know, it's funny just in the sense of like, of all places to go get hot wings, you go to a strip club. Like, I mean, it's just one of these things. Like, it's one of these things that sports brings you. You know, like it's one of those things where you're just like, how is this possible? But it's sports. Like, that's exactly what happens. You see wacky, crazy stories all the time coming out of sports, and this is one of those. So it's just funny. I mean, it's just something to laugh around at. I don't really think he was, hurting anybody that harmful. So I don't think it really was that harmful. But I mean, he'll serve his 10-day quarantine, and he'll get around it, and it'll be all good.
I know what we're all thinking, okay? He didn't go to a gentleman's club to get wings. That might have been a nice bonus, but we know darn good and well why he went to a gentleman's club. Failure to communicate. Okay, if he communicated to the league, yes, my father, funeral, great. Go to the funeral. But I highly doubt that he said, oh, yes, by the way, after the funeral or before the funeral, I might get a little hungry. I'm going to go to that gentleman's club down the block. Failure to communicate. Now, yes, irresponsible, yes. A little bit overblown, probably, but it still happened. And, yeah, that's where we're at. And honestly, with not even the NBA games starting up again, I imagine we're going to see a lot more of this to a degree. Maybe not a gentleman's club scenario, but maybe something else that might be a little comical. So you might have not heard the end of the NBA saga. Because I'm sorry, when you combine a bunch of people together in isolation, no matter the sport, no matter who you are, humans are naturally very social. And when you really put them into a bubble, they're going to want to go out. They're going to want to break the rules. So we're probably going to see more of this. So to be continued, I guess.
Are hot wings served at strip clubs served bone in or bone out?
Oh my!
That's my time. Thank you all, everybody, for coming. That will
do it for this episode of the Rich Report. Thanks for watching. If you were watching on YouTube, and thanks for listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We will see you on Wednesday. We're going to recap Whitaker versus Till, and then talk about whatever happens within the next 48 hours. We will see you on Wednesday. Have a great rest of your day.